Women's rights in the workforce has been a struggling issue for decades and still occurs today. There has been some progress made in regards to visions of equality set out in the 14th Amendment. For example, women can now work in the same positions as men, the wage gap has decreased, and new laws have been passed to support equality in the workforce. Throughout history, however, there have been many steps taken that have led to this. The Seneca Falls Convention was the first women's rights convention. It was held in Seneca Falls, New York, and spanned 2 days over July 19th and 20th in 1848. It was organized by Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Stanton, two abolitionists who met at the 1840 World Anti-Slavery Convention. During the Seneca Falls Convention, they discussed the social, civil, and religious condition and rights of women. Because this was the first organized convention for women's rights, it sparked an interest in women all around the U.S. and brought them together to fight for their liberties. The government during this time did not recognize what these women were doing. They could see that women were not treated as fairly as men and did nothing to fix it. Therefore, these women wrote out demands that they wanted for themselves from the government. While this did not cause immediate legal changes, it caused many more women's rights movements around the country. The Equal Pay Act is a labor law that prohibits gender-based wage discrimination in the United States. It was signed in 1963 by President John F. Kennedy. It forbids employers from paying men and women different wages or benefits for doing the same job that requires the same skills and responsibilities. Following this law, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 further strengthened the law against discrimination by making it illegal to discriminate on the basis of sex, religion, age, and more, for pay or benefits. More women have entered the labor force to hopefully find equal pay in their envelopes. However, this will not be the case. There was still unequal pay for women. The gap closed slightly over the next 50 years, and it will continue to close. But still, till this day, women make less money than men.
The Paycheck Fairness Act would help to close these punishing gaps by eliminating loopholes in the Equal Pay Act of 1963, helping to break harmful patterns of pay discrimination and strengthening workplace protections for women. At the current rate, the wage gap will not close until 2059. President John F. Kennedy played a very important role in this event because he brought the Equal Pay Act of 1963 into play, but now the current system could help to strengthen that by passing the Paycheck Fairness Act. Their actions are not helping the inequality issue of women in the workforce because they don't believe that the law should be passed, despite the fact that it will help more people than just women. This is similar to our modern-day issue because it discusses the issue of inequality for women in the workforce and ways to possibly solve it and help give women equal rights in the workforce, such as a bigger paycheck. This proposed law connects to the Equal Pay Act of 1963 because that was the first attempt to end the current inequality issue, and now the Paycheck Fairness Act is trying to strengthen the current law. This proposed bill focuses specifically on helping to end the inequality issue for women, especially the wage gap, and to strengthen current laws. The 2017 Women's March was a worldwide protest on January 21, 2017, to advocate legislation and policies regarding human rights and other issues, such as women's rights, immigration reform, and workers' rights. Most of the rallies were aimed at Donald Trump immediately following his inauguration as President of the U.S., largely due to statements that he had made in his positions which were regarded by many as anti-women or otherwise offensive. Protesters felt satisfied with what they had done and called more to action as they realized what was going on and how big of an issue women were facing. The protest was planned and started by individuals all over the nation, welcoming and encouraging others to join them in Washington, D.C. to help protest. Although the march did not result in any changes to bills or new laws, it was a way to show the strength and determination women have to fight for their rights. It was also an outlet for people to channel their post-election anger and use that to fuel their beliefs and actions to bring about change. By millions of people participating, it challenges those who aren't doing anything to get involved, hopefully getting more people on board to bring about change. The protesters' actions demonstrated equality for the most part, as they were only speaking their mind about women's rights. Some may view that as unequal for leaving out certain aspects that they think should be included, but it was mainly viewed as equal because it was the Women's March, protesting for women's rights. This event is similar to our current issue because one of the main goals of the protest was to get women the equal rights that they deserve in the workplace. This event connects to many of the protests that happened years ago, specifically the ones fighting for rights and desegregation. A difference that exists between the Women's March and past protests is the use of violence. Although they both were considered to be peaceful protests, the ones years ago usually escalated quickly and violence was used to bring it to an end. Unlike today, there is no violence involved at the Women's March.
One of the current civil rights issues we have today in the women's right in the workforce, women today are treated unequally compared to men. In the workplace, women do not hold as many higher up positions as men, and also are often not paid as much. Women have also been found to be more likely harassed by men. The survey conducted in 2017 found that women employed in the majority male workplaces are more likely to say their gender has made it harder for them to get ahead at work. They are less likely to say women are treated fairly in personal matters. Women also currently hold only 5% of the CEO position at those C&P 500 companies. In a study conducted in 2016, female full-time year-round workers made only 50.5 cents for every dollar earned by men, a gender wage gap of 20%. This shows how there is still gender discrimination in the workforce. There is also unequal pay in sports. Gender discrimination in the athletics industry has long been a controversial topic. Even the founder of the Modern Olympics said in 1896, no matter how gifted a sportswoman may be, her organism is not cut out to sustain certain shocks. For the U.S. women's soccer team, their win in the 2015 World Cup got them a $2 million reward. Meanwhile, in the male version of the tournament, the winners were handed $35 million just a year earlier. Statistics shows that female sports do not carry the same weight as male sports. According to the Women's Sports Foundation, male athletics get $179 million more in athletic scholarships each year than females does. Additionally, collegiate institutions spend just 24% of their athletics operating budgets on female sports, as well as just 16% of recruiting budgets and 30% of scholarship budgets on female athletes. To end discrimination in workplace, there are many things that need to be changed. First, educate all workers about discrimination. If people at their jobs respected each other's differences, discrimination's average will become lower. Second, be prepared to investigate complaints of discrimination or harassment. If we want people to prevent retaliation, we have to make sure that the complaining employee is not retaliated against any other circumstances. Employers must be aware that the unlawful retaliation extends beyond standards at first personnel decisions, such as terminations, demotions, and salary reductions, and includes any actions that would have dissuaded a reasonable person from having complained in the first place. Another solution is to develop a media strategy. Contact the media and make them aware of actions, workshops, and other activities. Encourage reporters to cover women's athletics in the area. Also analyze business decisions for unintentional discrimination, so employers must be aware that discrimination may result in an employment practice that is seemingly neutral on its face. For example, a standardized test for applicants negatively impacts a protected class of employees. In this case, the discrimination is not the product of any bad intent. Instead, it results from neutral decision-making.